Hello and welcome to our webinar. My name is Jochen Schurich. I'm one of the co-founder of Tapkey and I'm taking care of business development and partner acquisition.
My name is Eduard Krak. I'm a software developer, and besides an actual development, I help our partners to integrate with Tapkey Connect platform.
This is the first part of a whole series of webinars where we'll show you how the Tapkey Connect platform works and how you can easily integrate it into your products. I will start this webinar with a high-level, not too technical overview about the Tapkey Connect platform and all its products. And after that, Eduard will take over and will show you how you can integrate it. He will show you the source code and all this technical stuff. And at the end of the webinar, you are able to download the source code and make an integration by yourself and use Tapkey compatible hardware.
If you'll have any questions during this webinar, feel free to post them into the chat. Our colleague Chiara will take care of them and we'll answer them right after the webinar.
But what exactly is Tapkey? The short answer is an open platform for smartphone-based access for all kinds of locks. But Tapkey is so versatile that this short answer is a little bit too short. We offer Tapkey open platform products that can easily be used with the Tapkey app. Based on this Tapkey-enabled hardware portfolio, we offer APIs and SDKs to integrate access into your own customized solution. A platform thrives with its partners and users. We are very proud that there are so many hardware and software partners who work with us. On this slide, you can see well-known companies from various industries such as co-working, property management, mobility sharing, and smart logistics. The Tapkey Connect platform connects hardware manufacturers and solution providers. It enables our integration partners to enrich their own products with mobile access as a feature, using a broad variety of available hardware. Tapkey offers many features out of the box that an integrator does not have to worry about. To name just a few of such features. Intelligent revocation lists. If you revoke a grant, then we make sure that this key does not work anymore. Or time handling. The time on the lock is automatically synchronized each time a lock is used with a smartphone. We also take care of time zones for time-restricted keys. Or think about firmware upgrade. This means that new features or improvements can be deployed in an installed base. And offline functionality, even in the event of an internet outage, you will not be left in front of a closed door. There are many more useful features helping you to focus on your business. But there are more advantages. With Tapkey, you can use hardware from different manufacturers to cover your use case. You have the freedom of choice when it comes to selecting the right access hardware. If you think, for example, of a co-working space where you need access to doors, furniture, boxes, or even cars, with Tapkey, this is all possible. The Tapkey Connect platform basically consists of the Web API and the mobile SDK. The Web API provides web service interfaces which are used to manage your locking system. Platform partners use these interfaces to connect their platform to the Tapkey Trust service. Whatever type of integration you plan, the Web API is the basis. The simplest integration uses the Tapkey app to unlock. The necessary smartphone user package are available via the app or online store. No further agreement with Tapkey is necessary. If you want to integrate the magic unlock button into your own app, then the mobile SDK comes into play. This Tapkey mobile SDK encapsulates the complex functionality such as communication with the Tapkey Trust service or talking to the locking devices. You need to use your own identity provider because you have to authenticate your users. There is also the option of the white label keyring app. It really helps integrators, so we have decided to release the Tapkey open source keyring app. This app is easy to customize and production grade. Our open source keyring app is also a great example of how to use the mobile SDK. You can use it as a blueprint to accelerate your own app development. If you use the mobile SDK or the Tapkey open source keyring app, you need an integrator license agreement. Here I show you how to enrich a third-party cloud platform with mobile access the simple way. A connection to the Tapkey Web API is all you need to provide ad hoc access to your users. The third-party platform manages access and actually tells the Tapkey Trust Service who can have access. The customers use the Tapkey app with the iPhone, Android phone, or even the iWatch to open the doors. Eduard will explain today how this works. The Lucabo platform is a perfect example of such an integration. The Lucabo platform is an online booking system for office spaces, sports facilities, and event locations. This platform handles all customer-related processes, registration, booking, payment, and access. The owner of a locking system can link his Tapkey account to his Lucabo account. Now the Lucabo platform can manage access on his behalf. To unlock the door of a booked room, the end user uses the Tapkey app. Such a web API integration is quite simple, but adds great benefit. But if you want to offer your customer a branded app to strengthen your brand and add a very useful key feature to your app, then you need to use the mobile SDK. First, you need to connect your management platform to the Tapkey Trust Service to manage access by using the Web API. This is so far the same as we heard before. Plus, you need to integrate the mobile SDK into your app, or you can choose to customize the Tapkey open source keyring app. One very important thing, you have to take care of the authentication of the user by using your own identity provider. We will cover this in part 2 of this webinar series. There are several great benefits. Now your customers don't need to download an additional Tapkey app or register an additional Tapkey account. The look and feel is in your hands, and your customers have a better brand experience. There are many applications out there where the Tapkey technology is seamlessly integrated. The unlock button is the perfect key feature for end users to use the Tapkey, to use your app every day. But here I present you a great example, SCAP, Office as a Service. On the SCAP platform, you can book an office unit fully online. They match the reservation with the lock. This means the users have instant access and the invoicing is done completely automated. This was a short high-level overview of the Tapkey Connect platform and how it can be integrated. I would like to make a short announcement for the upcoming second part. We will go into detail on how you can use the mobile SDK, how to set up an authentication provider, and how you get a license agreement. But now, Eduard will make a deep dive into the Web API.
Thank you, Jochen, for your introduction and for giving me the floor. Now, I would like to start with a bit more in-depth technical information about the Tapkey Web API, tell you how you can leverage it within your own solution, and give you the most important information to start. To understand any system, you need to understand the objects you are going to be working with. So let's have a look at entities of Tapkey. Users. An actual registered user, either by Google ID, Apple ID, or username and password. When talking about the Tapkey application, we identify the user by his email, meaning he is logging in with his email and password. Every user can have 0, 1, or multiple login systems. This represents an entire enclosed system of logs and access permission-related information. If a user has no log, he typically does not have and does not need a login system. If a user registered his first log a login system is automatically created for him. Now, you might ask, but why would I ever need two login systems? The reason is to separate the context. Imagine you have logs that you are using at home and you're giving the access permissions to them to your family, and you have logs that you are using at work and you're giving the access permissions to your coworkers. Now, you might not want to mix up those two worlds, and therefore you decide to separate them into two login systems. In the integrator world, we call the login system an owner account. The reason is that the registering of OAuth clients and identity providers goes beyond the name login system. So starting from now on, I'll be calling it owner account. Now let's talk about the logs. We differentiate between physical logs, an actual hardware with its own ID that is not changing over time, and bound logs, which is a physical log registered, tied to an owner account. Whenever you create a new access permission, they are created for a bound log. If you decide to unbind or remove the log from your owner account, all the permissions are revoked and the physical log is ready to be used with another owner account with no permissions on it. This means that one physical log can be bound to only one owner account at the same point of time. Now we get to a very important entity to understand, contact, represented as smartphone user in Tapkey application. Many integrators do have issue to understand the difference between the contact and user at the beginning. Contact is a link to an actual user via his identifier, in the Tapkey app, email. Think of it as a phone book. If you have a smartphone and you create a contact with name and phone number, it doesn't create a user. It creates a mapping to an already existing user. If you create a contact with a non-existing number, you can do so, but as the user with such number does not exist, calling this contact will never reach anyone. The same applies to contacts in Tapkey. You can create a contact and grant for a user with email that does not exist, but no one will be able to use it. Important thing to mention is that contact exists only within an owner account. That means if you have two owner accounts and you want to create an access permission for a single user in both of them, you need to create one contact in each of the owner accounts, so together two contacts. Next entity to talk about is grant. Grant is an actual access permission for a contact to a bound log. You can define an optional time restriction for this grant if you want. So it's only valid from until certain date, or it is valid on certain time periods, like every weekday from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. The last entity I'll be talking about today is owner account permission. I will start with an example. Imagine we have 3 users: boss of the company, manager of the company, and the janitor of the company. Boss owns 2 owner accounts, one for home and one for office, as I just mentioned before. Manager has no owner account, and janitor owns 1 owner account for storage room where he is storing his tools. Now the boss says, I don't want to spend time managing the access for the employees. That's what I hired the manager for. And therefore, he decides to make the manager a co-administrator of the office owner account. The same can be done for the janitor if he needs to manage the access for the office as well. Now we see that for any owner account, you can have 2 different permissions. You can either be an owner or a co-administrator. The question is, what's the difference between those 2? The only difference is that the owner can assign new co-administrators and owners, while co-administrator cannot. Co-administrator can only manage an access within the owner account, but cannot say who else can do so. If you decide to make someone else an owner of your own account, please be aware that he can actually remove your own owner account permissions and he can stay the only owner. This is a typical scenario when you want to transfer the owner account to someone else. You will make him an owner and he will remove you as an owner. There are some more entities defined on our developer documentation, but as they are not relevant for this webinar, I'll be not talking about them today. Now that we have the basic understanding of entities in Tapkey, let's move to the next part of the webinar, authorization. To work with Tapkey Web API endpoints, you need to be authorized. The reason is obvious. You need to prove that you're allowed to work with a certain owner account. Authorization is handled via the access token that is retrieved via the OAuth 2 authorization framework. Tapkey acts as an OAuth 2 compliant partner and supports 4 main grant types. It is recommended to familiarize yourself with this framework to understand the concept. As a first step, to start the integration, you need to register an OAuth client, basically your application within Tapkey. In the integrator portal that will be shown later, you will create a new OAuth client and select a grant type that you want to use. Tapkey will generate all the needed information for you, so you can authenticate your application and access the Tapkey Web API. As I already mentioned, there are 4 supported grant types: client credentials, authorization code with client secret, authorization code with PXE, and token exchange. Authorization code with client secret and with PXE do behave the same for the end user, and the difference is that due to a storage of sensitive data, the one with the client secret is used only on server-side applications. Token exchange is a custom extension grant specific to Tapkey, and it is relevant for a Tapkey mobile SDK that we will discuss in the next webinar. Therefore, today I will cover 2 of the grant types: client credentials and authorization code flow in general. On this slide, we see 2 pictures, each for one of the grant types. Client credential is used when you want your own system to manage your own logs. You are basically making your application a co-administrator of the owner account. On the other hand, authorization code flow is used when your own system will be managing logs of other users that will connect to your platform by signing in and giving you the consent to do so. Let's have a deeper look on each of them. As I already said, client credentials OAuth client does act on its own behalf, basically like it's its own system user or service account. You will get a generated email address that you can use to assign this application a co-admin rights to any owner account. You will have a client ID and client secret generated that are basically username and password that you will use to authenticate your application and receive an access token to use with API. As client secret, or the password, as I said, is a sensitive information, you must use this grant type only within confidential clients like server-side applications. So, as we see on this graph, we see a login system that has an OAuth client created with certain email address. This email address is made a co-admin of this login system. And so the application has with its client ID and client secret access via API to this login system. To summarize what has been said, client credentials is used when your system manages your own logs. This client acts on its own behalf and therefore needs to be made a co-admin of the login system. You can make this client co-admin of many login systems, of course, but the downside is that you will be using only one credential to access them all. The other grant type is authorization code flow. In this case, your application asks the user to act on his behalf, to impersonate him. Application serves as a platform for multiple users that connect their login systems to it. When they want to do so, they need to log in to prove their identity and to agree or give a consent to the application to work on their behalf. This is typically done only with certain scopes. Scopes limit what application can do on your behalf. That means that if the app wants to manage the grants, it doesn't need permission to delete the logs. Scopes are listed when the user is giving the consent, Asking for unnecessary scopes might lead to trust issues with your application. To summarize authorization code flow, it is used when your own system wants to manage login systems of different users, where you do not own the logs. Your platform works as a self-sign-up page where new customers may join at any point of time. To understand it better, it might help you to show some real-life usages of authorization code flow. Most of you probably used Facebook at some point and maybe even tried to use some application with it. Typically, the application would ask for permission to use the data from your public profile so they can use it in their leaderboards, or even ask you to post in your name on your own wall. So for instance, a message about the new high score that looks like you posted yourself. Next example is Lockaboo, a booking and reservation platform for shared facilities where you can connect your Tapkey account and give the platform a right to manage the access for you based on the bookings on their webpage. In both cases, you need to log in and click consent button to agree. Let's have a final comparison and example of two mentioned grant types. In hospitality industry, we can think of two different cases of booking platforms. First is the hotels chain that owns all the hotels, all the logs within the chain. In this case, your booking system wants to manage your own logs. Remember, client credentials. Owner accounts are known upfront and you are in full charge of them. On the other hand, think of a private apartment rental like Airbnb, for instance. You are providing a platform for bookings, but the owners of the houses and logs are some other people. These people will self-sign up on your page and give you consent to manage their login systems based on the booking from your platform. Your system will manage logs of other people, authorization code flow. I hope this explanation helped you to understand the fundamental difference between these two grant types, and that you will be able to choose the correct one for your own integration. For those of you who made it this far, I promise this is the last slide before the real demo. Important links. Tapkey portal, a place where you will manage the logs, smartphone users, grants, and all information regarding access. Tapkey integrator portal, a place to register your OAuth clients and manage all development-related information. Documentation, and much more detailed information about the Web API, endpoints, mobile SDK, authentication, grant types, strongly recommended to read before actual implementation. Shop. Everything starts with the first log. This is the place to get one. To use the Tapkey with your mobile devices, we have application for both iOS and Android available. Let's move to the demo. Give me short time to get ready and see you in a minute. Hi there again. I just registered as a new user into the Tapkey application, and now I'm offered to choose if I want to go to my keys or I would like to add a new log. As an integrator, I want to work with logs, so I got myself a log, and now I want to register it into my Tapkey account. So I choose Add Log. On the next screen, I'm asked to activate the owner mode by tapping your product with the owner card. If I open the box, I see there is a log and there is an owner card. I tap it, the log gets into the owner mode. We see it by flashing. I click Next. And on the next screen, I see the list of the logs available, which in this case is 1. I choose it. It will try to find it and add it to your account. As I said, if you have no owner account, it will create a new one automatically for you. Once it is done, it flickers green and we can enter the name for our log. Let's call it demo log. We save it and now we see it in the list. Once we are done, we can start to integrate. So let's go to Integrator portal, where I'll show you how to create an OAuth client and how to start with your own application. I'm at my computer and I'll be sharing my screen to show you how to start with your own application. Today, we are not going to code them, but we'll be using already existing sample applications linked in our developers page. These sample applications are publicly available and you are welcome to have a look on the code to understand the authentication and authorization process in a detailed way. We'll be also covering these in how-to series where me or my colleague will dive deeper into the code. As a first step, let's have a look on my.tapkey.com or Tapkey Web Portal, where I will log in with the account I used for binding the lock to see that everything was bound correctly. And yes, the demo log is here. The owner account has been created. By default, it has a name of the email address, but we can change it. So that's what I'll be doing now. Click on the settings. On the right top corner, I choose the rename and I will call it owner with demo log. Save. We see that everything has been updated. The log is there. So now we can move to the developers page. The developers page can be found on developers.tapkey.io, where we want to find the GitHub repository with mentioned applications. We select the web APIs, and in the submenu we see different sections, including topics we have already discussed. In the authentication section, we have information about all the grant types and all the authentication related information. In the operation section, we have a Swagger UI with all publicly available endpoints. And finally, in the example section, we have all our sample applications written either in .NET, Java, or Python. We start with the C# console application written in .NET using the client credentials flow. Let's open the link to the GitHub repository. We see there is a code and there is a short README file about how to get started. So we're using the client credentials flow. As I mentioned, it's when you want your own application to manage your own logging systems or your own logs. What does this application do? This application will print a list of all logging products that are managed by this OAuth client, meaning it will print out our own account with the log. We have a look what are the prerequisites, and if you remember correctly from the presentation, first step, you need to register your OAuth client with Tapkey. Where you do it, we do it in the Tapkey integrator portal, which can be found on portal.tapkey.io, where we log in with the account that we just logged in the portal, in the Tapkey web portal. So I continue with my email, log in, and when I log in, I see my owner account, owner with demo log, has been already pre-selected as it is the only one, and we have two sections for OAuth clients and identity providers. Today we care about the OAuth clients, so that's where we're going to register our application. We see we have no OAuth client so far, so we create a new one. We give it a name, let's call it demo client credentials. We select the grant type, client credentials, and as I said during the presentation, this application needs to be a co-admin of the owner account you want to work with. So here we have an option to make it the co-admin of the current owner account, which is what we actually want to do. So we can select it, and then we need to give it the permissions that about the entities it can work with. So let's have a look on the prerequisites page, and it tells us to give it a read only for both core entities, which includes the logs and owners' permissions. So in the list, we find the permission core entities, we give it the read-only permission, and we find the owners, and we give it read-only again. Now we save the OAuth client, and we see the client ID and client secret. As this is the only screen where you're gonna see the client secret and we want to use it to our app, I will save it to this Notepad instance for now, together with client ID. I close the screen, and we see that the client credentials has been created. We see that this client has a contact email that needs to be assigned as a co-admin with its ID and @imserviceaccount.tapkey.com. We have an option to reset the client secret, which would invalidate the previous one, so we don't want to do it for now. And our app is successfully registered. We can have a look in the settings section on mytapkey.com that the co-admin has been added to the owner account with the email that we have just seen. It also has been added to the smartphone users. So it's actually our contact. That's a prerequisite to use it as a co-admin. So now that we are done, let's have a look on the next steps, the usage. So we can either use it from the command line using the ID and secret arguments, or from Visual Studio, where do we pass the information into the launch settings as a command line arguments. To save the time, I already downloaded the solution and opened it in Visual Studio, so let's start it that way. So here we have the Visual Studio with the solution already open, and we see the projects here. So the console client credentials, .NET Core is what we are looking for. We open the properties folder, and here we have the launch settings. So here we should pass the command line arguments to start our application. Let's copy it from here. So client ID, I've set it in Notepad, paste it here, and client secret, paste it here. So now the application is prepared. As I said, the code will be covered in the how to series. Let's have a look if anything more is needed. No, it seems like we can just start it. So let's start the application. As it is a console application, it opens the console. And after a moment, we can see the information about our owner accounts. Displaying bound logs for owner account, owner with demo log. That's the one we have just seen. And the logs that are available in this account is the demo log. Correct. So this part is done. As you've seen, we made this client or this application a co-administrator of our owner account, and that was the way it could access it. We didn't have to do any additional logging, but passing the client ID and client secret. So let's have a look on another example, and this time with authorization code flow. So I opened the authorization code pixie.net project. Again, it has a README file with the information. So it's using the authorization code with Pixie. And as a prerequisite, we also need to register the client application in the integrator portal. So let's go to our OAuth clients,
and create a new one. I'll call it demo authorization code. I choose the authorization code. Authorization type, in this case, is with Pixie. Then we have the logo URL. I have nothing prepared, but it's a required field, so I'll use undefined for now. And then we have information about the redirect URIs, allowed course. So we need to pass the URL of our application here. And the README says it will start on the local host on this port. So I will just copy these values here. Pass the course. The post logout is not needed now. Let's have a look on the permissions we need to give it. So select the core entities and owner's permission with at least read-only. The same as with the client credentials. Select read-only here and select the read-only here. Save. And what I get back is the client ID. Again, I'll store it here just to have it quickly accessible. Close. Now, to show you the difference, in client credentials, I told you you're managing with your own system, your own logs. In authorization code, your system is managing logs of other people that will self-sign in into your application. So let's have a look again on the admins, and we see there is no new administrator. It's the one that we used in client credentials, but in this case, we don't create it as a co-admin. It's not needed. So once we have this, let's see how to configure the application. So ASP.NET Core apps have an app settings JSON file where all the configuration is stored. And here we paste our client ID. All other information is pre-filled. Let's open the solution, make the application, in this case, a startup project, find the app settings, we have it here, and here we have paste your client ID here. Let's paste the one that we got, and we are ready to start. So let's start it. This application will open an actual web page where we can connect our login system to the application. Once it is initialized, I will open it in an incognito window. And the reason is, as I'm currently logged in, I want to show you how it behaves for a not logged in user. So I will start a new incognito window. I'll copy the URL of the application. And we see that the application is fully running. If we want to connect our owner account to this application, we need to click this button. Let's do so. And we are redirected to Tapkey login screen. In this case, I would like to show you that with authorization code, your system is managing the login systems of other users. So let's connect with another user I have prepared for this webinar, with Jochen. And after I log in, I see the consent screen. This consent screen has no icon because I have set it to undefined. The name is, as we said it, demo authorization code is requesting permission to access your Tapkey account. This will allow demo authorization code to read core data and read owner accounts. Exactly the scopes we have set for this client. Additionally, it asks for offline access. This is described in more detail in the README file of the project, but basically serves to re-authenticate the user once the session is expired. If we are okay with all these scopes, we can grant the access to these entities to the application by clicking the Allow button. Once we do it, the application can read the owner accounts, can read the logs, and we see With this user, I have one owner account with the same name as the email and 3 logs connected. With this application, any user can self-sign in and give you the permission to manage his owner account. I hope now you understood the difference between the client credentials, where you had to make the client to be a co-admin of your own account, and the authorization code flow, where this can be done at any time. With this, I would like to wrap up this section of the webinar. I hope you understood all the necessary information and mainly that you understood the difference between client credentials and authorization code flow. If there are still some questions open, feel free to write them into the chat. We continue with the Q&A section where me and Jochen will be answering your questions in a moment. See you there.
Thank you, Eduard, for the great introduction of the Tapkey Web API. I'm pretty sure that this will help many of our integrators to use the Tapkey Connect platform and can easier and faster integrate it into their products. But now we're coming to Q&A, and my colleague collected a question during the webinar. So what's the first question? What products are compatible with Tapkey? I think I will answer that. There's a good overview of Tapkey products in our Tapkey online store. You can take a look there and see what Tapkey compatible form factors are available. And we are working constantly on enabling more hardware manufacturers to produce Tapkey compatible logging devices. With the Tapkey Web API, you can manage every logging device that can be used with the Tapkey app. The next question is there an extra fee for using the Web API? Clearly no. We tried to keep our licensing model as simple and clear as possible. And there are no hidden extra costs for using an API. And but please consider, when you unlock by using the Tapkey app, then you have to choose the right user package, which is necessary that you can serve your users. There's another question. How long does it take to integrate? Eduard?
Okay, yeah.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can answer. So that really much depends on the complexity of your application. So starting from a small console application, even without any knowledge of OAuth, it can take you a few hours. But if you want to create a full booking system, as I said, that depends on the complexity of the application. That can take a few days. But when it comes to Tapkey, it's only a few API calls to actually create a grant. So most of the work will be your application or your integration. Okay. I also got a feedback that the video of this webinar was not perfect and sometimes it was hard to read. We will provide you with a link so you can watch this video later, and I promise it will be in a better quality.
Okay, Eduard, answer the last question. And I hope the webinar was clear and understandable.
I know.
And
okay, so there were more questions.
There were more questions? Can you, sorry. So the question is, do we use Bluetooth only or Wi-Fi in the white label app? With Tapkey, we have the possibility to use NFC or Bluetooth Low Energy, but typically our integrators use Bluetooth Low Energy because it has a very good user experience when you integrate the magic unlock button into your own app. Or, Eduard, do you agree?
Yep. Oh wow, that's a
That
long.
was a very long, super high technical question.
We will get back to you with the answer, and we will actually provide the answer to everyone attending this meeting after the webinar. Yep, sorry.
So now I heard that this was the last question. I hope it was clear. The webinar, the content was clear and understandable. And if you have any further questions, send us an email, or we can make a video call and discuss everything in more detail. Now again, the teaser for the webinar part 2. It's an announcement for the second part, where we want to make a deep dive into the Tapkey mobile SDK, where we show you how to configure and use the open source white label keyring app, and also how you can get a testing licensing, test license, integrator license to try the Tapkey technology. Thank you for attending this webinar, and we look forward to see you in part 2.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.